This next and final topic kind of plays into that as well. I also saw an article pretty recently asking the question if Matt Nagy is a good play caller or not. And, that's something that we've really tried to kind of figure out as Bears fans. It's hard to kind of determine that, determine which one was him when it came to the play calls. Was it Helfrich? Was it Nagy? And that's why I wanted to bring up this next topic is how should we evaluate Matt Nagy's play calling? Like, has he been good or has he, been bad? And ultimately, I don't think the question is as easy as that. I think it's a very complex question filled with a lot of yeah buts. Yeah, but he's playing with Trubisky. Yeah, but he's, now he has a quarterback. We're going to have to see. But Reese, what are your initial thoughts on whether or not Matt Nagy is actually a good play caller?
Yeah, I think the scheme that Nagy has in place is pretty good, and I think that when you assess from where the play calling and where the offensive production was, with that of John Fox, it's definitely leaps and bounds ahead of that. What also needs to be taken into consideration is the roster and the offensive players that he has are also leaps and bounds better. So take that as you will. I think that what really bugs me about Matt Nagy's play calling is almost the situational play calling. I think we talked about this a lot with his red zone play calling. The fact that he cannot get it in the end zone is a problem. I mean, getting too cute, kind of moving away from running the football, even if they're getting blocked out. It seems like teams, the really good teams, they don't get that complicated along the goal line and in the red zone. I mean, you see the same thing. They try to pound the ball down the throat of the defense. If that doesn't work, then what's almost the next play you almost always see is a play action where you throw it into the flat and either the tight end or your fullback is there. I mean, we see it against the Bears all the time. Who literally won a game on us like that? I think it was the Eagles. It was in the 2018 playoff game against the Eagles where Golden Tate
went
caught
to Golden Tate. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, plays just like that. I mean, we see all the good teams run it. So it's almost it's remarkable we don't see that. I think that as far as play calling in the game goes, when the Bears are on it in 2018, they struck a pretty good balance. They ran a pretty decently balanced offense. It was last year when we really kind of started to see a lot of those issues. Fans were calling for them to give the ball to Montgomery more. But it just kind of, they got in a bad cycle where the offensive line didn't quite perform. They didn't have a great run scheme, so he always wanted to pass the ball, and the passing the ball wasn't extremely efficient. So they almost couldn't win. But yeah, I'm curious to see what you have to say. I think that Matt Nagy has decent play calling. I think he could improve, as anyone could. But really, we need to see the most improvement in crucial play calling situations, especially those in the red zone.
I'm not as critical as Matt Nagy as a lot of Bears fans are. Some Bears fans, you'll talk to them, they think he's horrible, or some people think Trubisky's horrible, and then he's just dealing with the results of that. I think a little bit on both sides of it's true. I think that the blame needs to be distributed upon both of them. This season is going to be very telling for the Chicago Bears and Matt Nagy in particular because, he finally has a quarterback that knows how to run his system, right? When he was play calling with Chase Daniel, and people want to say that Chase Daniel is a better quarterback than Trubisky. No, Chase Daniel is not a better quarterback than Trubisky. But Matt Nagy's play calling with Chase Daniel was so different.
Yeah,
So
astoundingly
yeah,
better.
it was like watching a different coach for the Bears. And, I think that is a product of the quarterback then. So with Trubisky, he didn't know most of the scheme, and it seemed like Matt Nagy was either trying to throw his entire scheme at him or none of the scheme at him. Oh, the entire playbook isn't working? Okay, we're going to throw, screen passes for the next entirety of the game. That it was that polar differences. And I think Trubisky, rightfully so. He was still a young quarterback. He was only in his second year of the scheme. Trubisky, rightfully so, was maybe struggling a little bit with learning the playbook, struggling with reading the defenses, making the checks at the line of scrimmage. So he didn't know the entire playbook. So he, rightfully so, he might have been a little bit overwhelmed with what Matt Nagy was throwing at him. Matt Nagy's mistake was then cutting it down to a pretty much incompetent quarterback level, like we were playing with a third string quarterback or something. It was just that polar opposites. And, that's on Matt Nagy. The fact that Matt Nagy couldn't find some sort of in-between for his quarterback into, where he's playing part of the scheme, but maybe not using everything. Maybe that's on Matt Nagy, right? But also, the fact that Trubisky couldn't learn the playbook fully is on him. And that's why I'm excited to see Nick Foles, because I think Nick Foles can actually play extremely well this year. Because I think Matt Nagy, when a quarterback knows his scheme, is a good play caller. I think he play calls pretty damn well, actually. And I think you saw it take pressure off the run game when he had Chase Daniel in there. He was able to really balance everything out. And he was able to more focus on the game rather than, can my quarterback perform this play? Which is a huge difference in mindset. So ultimately, is Matt Nagy a good play caller? When the quarterback knows the scheme, I think yes. When the quarterback, maybe doesn't know the scheme fully, I would say no. I don't think Matt Nagy has been that great for Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think he's developed him that well. And you can blame that partially on, Dave Ragone, the previous quarterbacks coach, now passing game coordinator. And we'll see if, obviously our new coaching staff changes will help alter that a little bit. But I think that Matt Nagy, he has his flaws, but at the same time, he can perform well when the quarterback knows the scheme. Something I love you brought up, Reese, is the red zone play. And the Bears, they struggled a little bit in the red zone when Chase Daniel was in the game, but it wasn't as apparent as when it was with Trubisky. But the thing that always pissed me off is it was like we could never get in the red zone when we were on the 1 yard line. But at the same time, every damn time we ran a 2-point conversion, we somehow converted it. Like it was these weird like polar opposites in that regard. And I think there is times where Matt Nagy tries to get too fancy, and maybe that's because Trubisky can't do everything. We don't really know yet. We have as many questions to answer about Matt Nagy this year as we have about Trubisky and Nick Foles this year. It's going to be just a really telling year, and that's why I'm excited for this season. I'm excited to see, hey, is Matt Nagy the coach that we've been needing? Is Trubisky just really that bad? Because I think we'll get a really true perception of that, considering that the Bears are playing better a lot of the time with Chase Daniel, even though Chase Daniel is not a good quarterback. That's pretty startling. So, is Matt Nagy a good play caller? I don't think we know yet. I think that he could be. I think he could be a really good play caller. And something else that I love you brought up, Reese, was the whole Golden Tate play. The funny thing is that the Eagles ran that 3 plays consecutively. They ran the same play 3 times in a row. The Bears knew what was happening every single time, and somehow it just was so unstoppable that after 3 times they got in.
Yeah. I wish I was better at analytics, because then I could tell you, whether or not what I'm saying is true or not. But I almost feel like if you looked at the numbers and you broke it down, and of course there's less numbers to pour over with Chase Daniel than there is with Trubisky, but I feel like they just ran more play action with Chase Daniel at quarterback, and as a result, they end up throwing the ball downfield a lot more. It just seemed like it worked out that way, and like you said, watching them play under Chase Daniel and Mitchell Trubisky was watching like 2 totally different offenses, and yeah, it really seems it's very polarizing. It's almost like, Nagy is like this manic play caller, where he's like in 2 totally different moods depending on like what the situation is about. So, man, yeah, I wish that, some of these things could be figured out and smoothed out. And, I think that's a lot of what we initially said with Nick Foles was, having a quarterback that can understand his offense and having that familiarity with the offense is just going to give him so much of a boost over Trubisky. And that storyline has maybe faded away, but I think the actual premise of that comment is still very much true. And it's about, how much has Trubisky learned about this playbook? I mean, come on, this is, in his 3rd year in the system now. There's no more time to make excuses about, he doesn't understand the play or he doesn't understand the offense. And, if it boils down to you have to pick the quarterback that knows the offense better, and, I know all of us want to give Trubisky a shot. I've seen it with all the Bears fans in the YouTube comments, this is Trubisky's year. Like, we have to give him another shot, this and that. And I understand and I agree with the sentiment for the most part, but if it ends up coming down to which quarterback knows the offense better, and the quarterback that's actually been on the team for 3 years but still doesn't understand it, and then the new quarterback that, had some knowledge from the past about it comes in and still knows a lot more, I think the decision is pretty clear then.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of great points, especially about Matt Nagy being a little bit manic with his play calling. It's so unfortunate because I think with being a head coach, one of the big things you have to get used to is like play calling and managing a team when you're not under perfect conditions. And it is a little bit worrisome that, maybe Matt Nagy isn't the best coach to be, developing a young quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And yeah, the best coaches, no matter the circumstance, know how to extract the best from their players. They know how to work with them. They know how to stick to their scheme, but also, change and fix and adapt things as much as they need to in order to get, the actual players that they have that are available to them to be playing at their best. And yeah, it seems like at times, Nagy has not been able to accomplish that. And it is worrisome. And I think that, Pace has provided Nagy some good teams to go out there and play some very competitive football with. And they've played good competitive football even when this team has been looking, like with the eye test, very poor. So, I think, we're just going to have to see how this plays out over the course of the season. And, we're going to learn a lot, like you said. I mean, it's a telling season for not only Trubisky, but also Nagy, and we'll see what role Foles has in it, as the season progresses and maybe even from week one. So we're going to learn a lot about this Bears team this year.
Hey guys, like our video, subscribe, and check out our bi-weekly podcast on Apple Podcasts. Thanks.